I'm the chairperson of Rethink NYC, who's had a lot to do with advocating for a better resolution of the Penn Station situation.
Go ahead, Sam.
John asked me to speak about the few people I have some knowledge of, not a tremendous amount about. But on the DOT side, Mike Flynn, I have not worked with him directly, but he has a deep affiliation with Sam Schwartz, who I think most of us consider to be one of the good guys. And I take some of my leads, not all, but from the Streets blog folks who I think are pretty close to this, and I think we can at least expect to be listened to on many of the issues on streetscapes and the type that we think important. Julia Curson, who has a very senior role now, I do know somewhat. She was with the governor's office. She was also on the station working advisory group, which I was recently appointed on. I've had a couple of discussions with her. She's actually been, whether she meant it or not, who knows, but complimentary about many of the writings that Rethink sends out. She feels they're well written, entertaining, and has expressed general support, but it seems somewhat as a private individual as opposed to a public individual. The governor of late, particularly with her calling Block 780 off limits and some things like that, has been leaning in our direction. How far that goes remains to be seen. I do see it as a good sign that the governor and most of the local electeds have said 780 is off the table. And I think what John's going to be discussing next week in terms of the conversion of the Stewart to affordable housing, you're beginning to see that southern segment below 31st Street to move in positive direction. So I think that's good. What I would say about Julia is she does come out of the MTA, or at least part of her career. And sources I'm close to feel she's very pro MTA, and the MTA and/or Jano Lieber has their fans and detractors. I sit somewhat in the middle on that, but I think whether it's the press or even certain of the advocacy groups, they sort of lean Jano. Sometimes that can be hostile to some of the other agencies, which may be deserved. At times with respect to Amtrak, it's certainly deserved, but I think we need to be careful about it. While I'm neutral on Jano, I do see out of that organization a my way or the highway attitude. And I think we're going to need to be careful about that. On through running, he has expressed some openness to it in a Gothamist piece late last year. Whether he means that or not remains to be seen. I think he's very hostile to some of the other Penn Station ideas that were not his own, and his has been taken off the table. And the kind of things you'll see is a lot of, we should just replicate the Long Island Railroad concourse throughout the rest of Penn Station, and that's good enough. Reasonable people can take that position. I don't. I was there over the holidays a few times, and I think if you stand near the 8th Avenue side of the Long Island Railroad concourse, you can't be sure whether or not you're in today's Port Authority bus terminal or not. It's really not a very great station. Well, that's more form than function. I think if you go down to many subway stations in New York City, they're nicer than the Long Island Railroad concourse. I would point to the Staten Island Ferry subway station as one of them. So, I think we need to do better. Obviously, Rethink is more concerned with function being the through running argument than not. I think you saw we sent something out Monday, reissued a Jim Venturi, Chazar Alescu piece about the impact through running can have on affordability and housing starts, which Andy Byford has been backing us up on with his experience with the Elizabeth line. So I do think people are reading and hearing these arguments. We all have to keep making them in our own sweet way. So I at least know Julia, I have to get a new email address for her, was reading and paying attention to what we said. And, that's half the battle to get somebody to even acknowledge you exist. So I'm cautiously north of neutral there. And on Mike Flynn, while I don't know too much about him directly, I think we're going to see the Mamdani administration trying to do more than meet us halfway on a lot of these issues. And there are things we have critically of him, whether it's his affiliation with the City of Yes, or I think he has a lot of RPA, or at least one RPA type on his transition team. At a minimum, from what I've seen of him to date, think he's willing to pivot if you prove your point. And the thing I think we can't do is sit on our hands and wait for them to define the message. We have to get our messaging out loud and clear early, whether it's the public housing issue or through running or any number of other things. And you'll see that in a lot of what my organization is sending out. We are trying to do that. I'm also working with other organizations. I do think the preservation community needs to come out even more strongly and say, stop scapegoating us. Through running would turbocharge the sustainable economic benefits of the gateway tunnels, whereas the railroads proposed to knock down the neighborhood to the south and add terminal tracks would be sending us into the 1950s instead of the 2150s. So